in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. But all that talk stopped January 2001. It was like all of a sudden they said, just kidding. We didn't really mean it. What we meant was we didn't want the Democrats spending the money. But now that we can spend the money, let's blow the doors off the bank vaults and let's just spend as if there is no tomorrow. Almost, you can just see them collectively thinking. In January 2001, they've got the House, they've got the Senate, they've got the White House. What's a governing strategy? And you can just, I can just visualize Karl Rove, who used to be the executive secretary of the Virginia Republican Party and back in the early 70s, saying, what about this idea? What about a one-word strategy? That one-word strategy is bribery. We're going to bribe the voters. You, the voters, have the votes. We have the money. Let's talk. And so they begin the process, bribing the farmers with the largest farm bailout in the history of America. Seniors with prescription drug benefits, $7 to $10 trillion of debt as far as anyone can see. Florida was awash with federal money in 2002, 3, 4, and it was just an attempt to bribe the voters. How appropriate, and they did it, of course, for the sole corrupt, immoral purpose of holding on to power. And how appropriate that turned to ashes in their mouth in 2006. We've made a lot of mistakes as conservatives. In my opinion, the number one mistake above everything else has been that we became an appendage of the Republican Party. We became an arm of the Republican Party. Too many conservatives, particularly my conservative friends in Washington, but many around the country, drunk deeply of the Republican Kool-Aid. My wife's a big fan of the TV psychiatrist Dr. Phil, and every once in a while she roped me into watching a session on TV. And he's got these people up there on national television, and they're a mess with this problem with that problem. And he turns to them after a while and says, well, how's that behavior working for you? Well, not very good, or they wouldn't be on national television. So I say to conservatives, how's it working for you, conservatives, to be an arm of the Republican Party, to be an appendage? Not very well, I don't think. Now, that's the number one mistake. The number one need that we have, in my opinion, going forward, is that we need new leadership. As conservatives, we are not going to get to the political promised land with this group of leadership. We are like the biblical Jews who had to wander through the desert for 40 years until that generation of corrupt, immoral leaders had passed from the scene. And we're not going to, America is not going to trust us with power again until we get new leadership. And mostly, it's the young people. We need young leadership. I haven't been here for a long time. I'm tired. I'm ready to turn it over to some others here. And I thought I tried to do that 15 years ago. And we looking pretty good in the mid-90s there. And I checked the score recently. We weren't doing very well, so I picked up a paddle. I'm trying to help our team being the lead here again. But we've got a lot of problems. We can do it, conservatives, but it's not going to happen this year. Collectively, we could all agree on who the next president would be. Conservatives would not govern America. We would not have a conservative House. We would not have a conservative Senate, governors, state legislators. It's going to take 6, 8, 10 years. I've got my plan. I've got friends who've got a plan. We're working hard, pedaling hard, and I think we're going to do it. It's just we're going to have to go back to basics and start this process all over. And I think the key to governing America is something that I call a third force, not a third party, but a third force. Back in the 70s, 80s, we used to meet for 7, 8 years at my home every Wednesday for breakfast. Paul Weyrich, Ed Fullner, Morton Blackwell, Ron Godwin, the moral majority, about 6, 8, 9, 10 of us, and we'd plot and plan. And one of the things that Weyrich taught us in those days was to reverse engineer the left. And we did that. They had political PACs, so we started political PACs. They had foundations. We began to form our own foundations. They had single issue groups. We began to form lots of single issue groups. And it worked very well. After a while, we were doing a better job than they were with what they had pioneered initially. So now, I think we need to take another lesson from the left, and that is third force organizations. Look at their environmental groups. They must have 340, 350 different environmental groups. The unions, the civil rights groups, the feminists, the homosexual groups. They have their single issue groups, and they all have their own agenda, their own source of funds, their own membership, and they act independent of the Democratic and Republican Party, pulling everybody their way. And I think that's what we need to do as conservatives. What's your passion? Is it homeschooling? Is it abstinence education, taxes, overregulation of small business by government? Whatever it is, focus on that issue. The name of this weekend here is Virginia Conservative Leadership. And that's what we need to do as each and every one of us. Leadership does not start with somebody whose title is president, chairman, candidate, governor, lieutenant governor. It starts with each and every one of us. And when we go back next week, we can start tens of thousands, and we need tens of thousands. We can start hundreds here of virtual organizations with whatever your passion is, very narrowly focused. And enlist your friends, your neighbors, your co-workers in helping you with this new virtual organization. Can you blog? Everybody can blog. And go start a blog on that same issue. And we need to mimic the left in terms of starting thousands and thousands of new organizations, acting independent of the Republican Party, but pulling them our way. As I said earlier, this is not a marathon. It's, it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Conservatives have had a number of strengths over the years, and one of our strengths has been that we have always approached politics as a marathon, not as a sprint. So if Ronald Reagan showed up right now, we couldn't support him. We don't have the infrastructure, and that's why we need to go back and build thousands and thousands of special interest organizations, as the left has done, pulling the Republican Party and the Democratic Party our way. I wrote, before I say that, let me just say quickly, Bill Middendorf, a wonderful conservative who was there at the Goldwater campaign in the early 60s, wrote a wonderful book called A Glorious Disaster. And I read the first page of the book, put it down, and realized I had been making a mistake. Every conservative I know had been making a mistake. I felt like the Lord had taken the scales off my eyes. Every conservative I know for 15, 20 years has been looking for Ronald Reagan. Is he behind this curtain? Is he down the hall? Maybe behind that door? All wrong. We should not be looking for Ronald Reagan. We should be looking for Barry Goldwater. Because it was Barry Goldwater who announced for president January of '64, knowing he would never be president of the United States. But he did it for the noble cause of launching the conservative movement. And you can draw a straight line from Goldwater's campaign in '64 to Ronald Reagan's election as governor in '66. The energy that came out of that campaign, organizations formed, people by the hundreds of thousands gave contributions to Goldwater for the first time in their life they'd never given to a candidate. Millions of people voted for a conservative candidate. The energy and passion has led to the conservative movement that we see here today. So let's look for lots of candidates to support at the local level, the state level, and the national level. Get that energy going, and from that lots of things will happen. We'll get a conservative movement going again. I see moderator closing in on me here. Just very briefly, I was at a White House reception back in the Reagan days, and a couple hundred conservatives, Reagan there, and it was just a wonderful event. Then Reagan excused himself and leave. There's hundreds of people in this wonderful East Room, I guess, the White House. Then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, we're all on the outside. And we don't know how we got on the outside. The wall was ringed with these nice young Marines, and we couldn't see it like a clock. They just got a little closer to us, a little closer, then we move away, and first thing you know, we were outside. So I see the moderator doing that here. Let me just, some of you young people may have heard of the movie, may have seen it, called The Blues Brothers. The Blues Brothers were a bunch of ne'er-do-wells who had a band. Some of them went to jail. They broke up, and they came out of jail, and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd are going to get the band back together again, okay? And they were on a mission from God. So conservatives, we're going to get the conservative movement back together again, and hopefully we're on a mission from God.